Hello. Hi, is anyone here? I don't know how this works. Hello. Could someone let me know if I am visible, audible, and if someone is here, I will then start. Thank you. Thank you. I will start. Thank you, everyone, for joining on an evening when India is playing Pakistan and we are scoring at an incredibly high rate. It gives me great pain to conduct this live today, but since I had promised that I would, so I never try and defer from my promise. Thank you everyone for joining. Today I would like to share with you a small plan about how exactly we plan to prepare for UGC NET. I would be trying and keeping. I would try and keep an eye on the chat option, which is there on the right hand side of my screen, to try and figure out exactly what questions you would have. Though I would prefer that you would keep the questions in bay till the end of the session. I would quickly share this with my Facebook friends. There might be someone who would be interested in joining this stream. I knew that there were someone who were interested. I will just quickly share. Just give me one moment, and then we will be up and running. Yes. Good evening to everyone. Right, I have shared it on Facebook. All of you are also requested to share the link of this YouTube live with your friends, juniors, seniors, enemies, anyone you would like, so that all of us are equally benefited by this session, if at all it proves to be beneficial. Let's start. We will first welcome everyone to this session. We are trying to understand what this exam is. So, before we go on to the preparation for this exam, we will start with an assumption that we know nothing, and then we will also try and keep an eye on what you all have to say. So, what exactly is the UGC NET? It is an examination supposed to be held twice a year, conducted by the National Testing Agency under the supervision of the University Grants Commission. The exam, which stands for National Eligibility Test, allows you to apply for the post of assistant professors, guest lecturers, faculty members, both part time and full time, at the entry level at colleges, universities, and other institutes of higher education. But the problem here is that there is often an assumption that once you clear net, that automatically means that you will have a job. Sadly, this is not true. You When you clear net, you only get an avenue to apply for net. There is no other, sorry, to apply for the post of an assistant professor. You don't get a job automatically. You are just eligible to apply. That's all that this exam allows you to do. So the question which often people ask is, why should we give this exam if it doesn't ensure that we will get a job? Well, the truth is, it doesn't ensure that you will get a job, but it does ensure that you will be able to apply. Without this job, you won't even be able to apply for a job full time. So it opens up an array of avenues. All of this information you already know. And of course, because of the pandemic, there was a low numbers of recruitments in 2020 and 2021, which brings us to a plethora of recruitments in 2022. Those of you who had kept an eye on my WhatsApp group, of which I was a part of until very recently, and my Facebook page and group, I will put the link in the chat section. For those of you who aren't there, you are more than welcome to join. I had already mentioned that in this year there will be an array of recruitments, and this will continue for the next 1 or 2 years because we did not have any significant recruitments for 2020 and 2021 owing to the COVID pandemic. So, all of you here are for preparing for the second paper of UGC NET, which is the paper of English. I believe I had mentioned this in my thumbnail and in my description section. So, welcome. We will start with an assumption that we have only passed our postgraduate degree or are pursuing our postgraduate degree. And so, what exactly are some books that we need to read? We will start with that. Then, I will also talk about some tactics which you need to cover in order to ensure that you get the best out of your NET exam. How exactly do we plan to cover MCQs? How many MCQs should we practice? What exactly do we need to do for chronology? Do we need to prepare any sort of notes? How many hours a day do we need to put in terms of practice? And do we need any sort of training or external help in order to crack NET? All of these will be covered in today's section. So we will start with the assumption of books. Sorry, the area of books. First up, we have to understand that the syllabus of NET that is given on the UGC NET's websites is not at all a good syllabus. Is there a way I can share my screen? No, I don't think there is. If you if you think about what areas we have to cover in terms of preparing for NET, you will clearly come across three primary areas. One is history of English literature, one is literary criticism and theory, and the third is miscellaneous. So we will start with the first one, which is history of English literature. Now, for those of you who have already done your history well in your undergraduate, you would already know what books to read. But let me add a few in order to, allow you to open up your avenues. Those of you who are willing to stay till the last, this is kind of a clickbait. I am being absolutely honest with you. But if you stay till the last of this video, I promise you that I will provide you with study materials for paper 2 in the chat box of this YouTube live, which will allow you to read books which I have compiled and accumulated over years, which I also share with my students who take NET classes from me. That link of that study material will be shared here in the chat section of your YouTube live, which you are now watching, but it will be shared only at the end of this YouTube live when this reaches its end. I'll also take questions at that point of time. So talking about history of English literature books, of course, you have two very basic books which you have to consider at any point of time. First is the Routledge History of Literature in English, written by Carter and McRae, published by Routledge. There are two versions. One is the older blue book and the newer orange book. If you have a lot of money, I suggest you buy the new one. It's available for around $600 in College Street and elsewhere. But if you are like me, very miserly, and you don't want to, you can try and find out the older version of the book. it is still available in certain parts of College Street, or you can also find out people who have passed out and are no longer interested in academics. They can sell you your book for free. How long will this live continue? This will continue up until I think 8:50 or 9. I will speak till 8:45, and then I'll take questions. Whenever the questions will be over, I will end this live. It will not go on for longer than 9 p.m. I can assure you of that. Um, so the first book, as I had already mentioned, is History of English Literature, published by Routledge and written by Carter and McRae. But then, how are you planning to read that book is also a very important question which needs to be answered on all grounds. Firstly, you obviously have to read the book cover to cover. But then, will that be enough? No, it won't. I suggest you buy a notebook like this one. Not, I don't mean by this one, I don't mean you have to buy this exact type of notebook. I'm suggesting that you have to buy a notebook of some sort in order to, note down important pieces of information. This is the tactic which I would like to share with you right at the onset of this YouTube live. Firstly, when you are suppose you are reading something from, say, the history of English literature from, say, the Routledge book, and it says that East is East and West is West, and never shall the twain meet. Um, Famous quote by Rudyard Kipling. But for example, let's assume that you don't know this. So what are you supposed to do? You are supposed to write this down in your notebook. The other day, when I was taking my class with my UGC NET students, I was showing them this huge bundle of notebooks that I had compiled when I was preparing for my net. That was almost 3.5, 4 years back in the year 2018 and 19. You have to realize while you are reading this book or while you are preparing for net overall that whatever you do, you cannot get away with no hard work. Cracking this exam is a very big deal, and you can only get that done if you work hard. You cannot expect to just read and remember everything like Sheldon Cooper or Mike Ross. You have to understand that our brains are not like superhuman brains. We have to, force our brains to remember certain things, and the only way I know how to do it is to write things down. By writing things down, you can always ensure that you remember things. Why? Because writing things down allows you to read it once, then read it twice while you're writing it down, and then after you've written it down, you read it once again. And because you're writing it down, your brain stores that information in a more secure and steadfast way as compared to when you have just read it. So what you have to do is you have to write down a lot of these informations. Now, what method should you apply when you're writing these pieces of information down? Why did I recommend a notebook and not, your computer or your phone? The reason is that when you're writing it using your hand, I know this sounds a little, prejudiced. I don't really care. But when you're writing down using your hand, I believe, and I think there were some studies conducted by the by Harvard University to prove this actually, that handwriting actually allows you to remember better because you are writing words at a time and not letters at a time. How do you type? Just think about this for a moment. How exactly do you go about the process of typing? You type one letter at a time. No matter how fast you type, you just type one letter at a time. But when you're writing, you write one word at a time, and then you go on to write subsequent words one after the other. That's how you form a sentence. So I suggest you write it down in your notebook in a physical format using pen and paper. That way, you will be able to retain it in a much more significant way. So that was the first book and the first tactic. Next, I will go on to recommend another book which is also very important in this context, which is the book of Michael Alexander. Many of you might be already acquainted with Michael Alexander's book. It's another very important history book. The question which many people ask me in this context is, what is the point of reading multiple history books? Because many of the pieces of information which is shared in Routledge will be repeated in Michael Alexander and vice versa. So why do we need to read multiple history books? It is because the books are not a copy of one another. They are not copy paste. One has not copied from the other and pasted it in his own or in their own book. There will be other pieces of information available in Alexander which will not be there in Routledge. There will be pieces of information in Edward Albert that will not be there in Alexander. Some information will be there in David Dyches. Some will be there in A.C. Ball, Legui Kazamia. Everywhere and anywhere you will find new pieces of information, but I will recommend just three books because I know people don't like reading a lot of history books. One is obviously Routledge, the other is Michael Alexander, and the other is David Daches, the 2-volume thick red and blue books by David Daches. Of course, all of you are already acquainted with them. If you are taking a look at the David Daches book, you might come across the idea that this book is actually very helpful when it comes to okay, Diptesh, I will answer your question in a moment. What I was telling about Alexander, Routledge, and more importantly, David Daches. David Daches' book comes to us as a very good source of writing answers when we are at the UG or the PG level. But David Daches' book also contains very unique pieces of information which is not there in any of the other books that I had just mentioned. Diptesh is asking as a beginner if they should start with William J. Long. Well, William Long's book is actually not one of the books that I would highly recommend, precisely based on the fact. Give me a minute, my PC is wanting a software update or something. Um, just a moment. Sorry. Yeah, William Long's book is not one of the books that I would strongly recommend, precisely because it's so basic. You can read it, of course. There is no harm in reading more books, but you have to read these three that I mentioned. If you are truly a beginner, then I suggest you start with Edward Albert, which is a good book for beginners. But I won't suggest William J. Long at all, actually, because Long's book actually gives you an idea that English literature and its history is very basic, and it downplays the history for you, if I may put it that way. Long's book downplays the history for you, which actually doesn't allow you to focus on what's really important. So three books when it comes to history: Routledge, Alexander, and David Dages. Now we will come to our understanding of literary criticism and theory. There is a book by Peter Barry. I'm sure all of you are acquainted with it. It's called Beginning Theory. Then we have Pramod Kenayar's book, Contemporary Literature, Contemporary Literary Theory and Culture, I believe. I don't exactly remember the name of the book. There is another book. Just give me a moment. I will tell you the name of that as well. It's very sad that I cannot share my screen here because it would have been very good to share it with you. Um, which book was it? Yeah, this one. Literary Theory and Introduction by Terry Eagleton. It's published by Blackwell. I have a PDF of this. I can share it with you. Um, Also, you can consider this book called Modern Literary Theory, edited by Philip Rice and Patricia Waugh. It's published by Arnold, which is a subgroup of Oxford University Press. There are many other books of literary theory. Of course, you also have Blackwell Guide to Literary Theory, which is written by Gregory Castle and published by Blackwell. In addition to this, if you are talking about the history of other countries, I recommend a history of Indian English literature by M.K. Nayak, American literature by Nandana Dotto, not Dotto or Gupta, yeah, Nandana Dotto. It is American literature, literary context, published by Orient Black Swan, written by Nandana Dotto, and the series editor is Pramod K. Nair. I also have a PDF of this one. And of course, I have already mentioned the books that you are talking about when it comes to your history of English literature and literary theory. In addition, there are also some more books. You can. I told you already about long. Please don't ask the same question again and again. There are some other books that I would also suggest. One of them is called Cambridge Companion to Critical Theory. The other is How to Begin Studying English Literature by Nicholas Marsh. I will write this down in the chat section. How to Begin Studying English Literature by Nicholas Marsh. There might be a typo or two there. Please ignore it. It's by Palgrave Macmillan, I believe. Yeah, it's by Palgrave Macmillan. There are many other books that I have mentioned. You can, once this live is over, you are free to go back to this section of the video and then note them down. It will also be available in the chat section. Um, right. Uh, there's a message. All right. This book was How to Begin Studying English Literature by Nicholas Marsh. We also have Literary Theory, a very short introduction by Jonathan Culler, from published by Oxford University Press. But out of all these, the most important book will be the Pearson's Paper 2 book, which is titled NTA UGC NET JRF English Paper 2. I have the 2021 version. If anyone has the 2022 version, they are more than welcome to share it with me or give the link here in the chat box. The 2021 version works perfectly fine for me as well. There are certain new inclusions like cultural studies, linguistics, research methodology in English. I will also try my best to talk about these sections when we get to the second half of this live. Now, when it comes to the miscellaneous section of the books, of course, you have to take into consideration a book like How to Read a Poem by Terry Eagleton. There is also another book called Key Critical Thinkers, Cultural Theory, written by Andrew Edgar and Peter Sedgwick. I will also give this when this live ends. This is published by Taylor and Francis, subgroup Routledge. And of course, we have the Oxford Companion to English Literature, edited by Margaret Drabble. It's also a very good book when it comes to understanding what you have published, what you have to read. Sorry if I was not audible for a very brief period back then. Okay, we have covered our section with books. Now let's quickly, give me 1 second. I will just quickly check the score. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, this is bad. Yeah, so let's now go on to the tactics. What tactics should we practice in order to, score well? Before I start talking about tactics, it's very important for us to understand something very crucially, namely, what is the first thing that we need to know in order to crack this exam? Well, there are three things that you need to know. First is that this exam, up until the present day, it doesn't have negative marking. I'm sure some of you already knew this, but of course there will be others who might not know this. But this exam, along with WB set, doesn't have negative marking, so you have to attempt all questions if you want to make a mark. Of course, just preparing for paper 2 isn't enough. If there are people who would be interested in this kind of a session for paper 1, you can let me know. I will conduct one in the future for paper 1 as well. For those of you who are appearing for net this time or the next time, I can see that the number of people who have joined here is very low, so I don't think the next live would be a very good idea. But anyway, since I had promised, I have started this live despite not being very excited about it because of the low turnout. Firstly, let's start with the tactics. You have to understand something. First of all, is the thing that when you are attempting a question, there will be three possibilities. First is the very good possibility that you know the answer, then you don't have anything to worry about. You just click the correct answer and you move on. By the way, you click the correct answer because it is a computer based test, a CBT, which was not the case up until 2018 June. June 2018 was the last time when this exam was conducted in the offline. By offline, I mean pen and paper OMR sheet mode. That was the first time I appeared for NET. Seems like a lifetime ago now. Anyway, you have the option to change your answer later on if you're giving it in a computer, uh, in case you didn't know that. So the first option is that you will know the answer, which is a good thing because you will just click it and then move on to the next one. The next will be you are not very sure about the answer. In that case also you can take an educated guess and then also move on to the next question. These two are not that bad. The first one is the best possible one, the second is also a doable thing. But then let's take a look at the third thing, which is when you don't have any idea what the question is asking. What exactly are you supposed to do then? Well, I have several tactics which I have developed over the years and I would share them with you. But then it depends on what type of a question it is. Generally, these type of questions are varied in nature. It could be a chronology based question, it could be an author identification question, it could be a match the following question, it could be an information based question, it could be a literary theory based question, a history based question, an anecdote based question, or an understanding based question. All of these are possibilities when you come across a question which you don't know the answer to. We will focus on the first two categories, which is a chronology based question and a match the following question. And then if we have time, we will try and understand how to identify a thinker from a quote or from an idea or from the question itself. Right. So firstly, we will do the match the following. What exactly do we need to do in order to focus on match the following? Well, for starters, we need to know that match the following, when it's given to you, if you know even one of the answers of column 1, then you are good to go, because in most of the cases it will so happen that only one of the answers will be there, where say for example you know that column 1 will be column 2's B, that is 1 will be B. Then you will find that in the answers there will be just one option where 1 will be B. There can be multiple options as well where 1 will be B. I will come to that now. Now, what will you do when there are multiple options where 1 is marked with B? Well, you have to follow a very simple tactic, which is you will find out, that is, you will try to find out what exactly are the other options given. For example, let me take an example and explain it to you with details. I will show you something on my phone. I think it will be visible. Give me a moment. Mm. Is this, no, I don't think it will be visible. Say I will read it out to you. Say column 1 has 1 2 3 4 and column 2 has A B C D, and your option A is 1B, 2C, 3D, 4A. Option B is 1B, 2D, 3A, 4C. Option C is 1D, 2C, 3B, and 4A. Yeah, I know it was not visible. That's why I'm reading it out. And option D is 1C, 2B, 3D, and 4A. I will not repeat this. If you have problems, you can just, go back a little and then hear it again. So you will notice in these options that 4 has been marked against A thrice in options A, C, and D. So it is pretty evident that 4's answer will be A. So we already know that. So we can eliminate option B where 4 is not marked as A. Then we will see that 1 has been marked against B twice in option A and option B. We will also see that 3 has been marked with D twice in option A and option D. We will also see that 2 has been marked with C twice in option A and option C. So what do we understand from this? That all the common elements, that is the ones which have been repeated, 1B repeated, 2C repeated, 3D repeated, and 4A repeated, all of these appear in only one option, and that is option A. That is how you reach your answer when you are doing a match the following if you don't know the answer to your question. Right? Now, what exactly do we need to do in case this is not possible? Suppose there is no repetition. 1 is 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. One option B is 1B, 2A, 3C, 4D, and so on and so forth, where there are no repetitions. Well, in that case, to be very honest, there are no possibilities of you trying and guessing what answer could be possible. But in most cases, these kind of repetitions will be there. Excuse me. These type of repetitions will be there, and you can use these repetitions to your benefit. Similarly, when you come to a chronology question, you can also use this kind of tactic to your benefit. For example, if a chronology option is saying A, B, C, D, E, this is your chronology for option 1. Option 2 is A, C, B, D, E. Option 3 or option C is A, D, C, B, E. And option D is B, D, C, E, A. So you already know that option D won't be correct because it starts with B and all the other 3 options start with A. So what you have to do is you have to not only use your common sense when you are trying to answer a question to which you don't know the answer, but also use the information which is given in the question paper to your benefit. When you're finding a chronology question, you will find out that a particular text or a particular author occurs exactly at the beginning of your chronology list or in the first half of your chronology list in one or more options. If it appears there in one or more, if it appears in more than one options, then you know that that particular author or that particular text will be there in the first half, and there will be some people who know that. That is why it is given there in the first half, so that even when someone knows that, it leaves them with more than one option to confuse them. But then if you don't know that, you can still eliminate one or two options. Then subsequently you will also find out something which is there at the second half or at the extreme end of your chronology list, which you will find by taking a closer look at these questions. Now, people often ask that, Dada, don't these things take up a lot of time? We are only having like 3 hours to deal with, 150 questions. So how are we supposed to do this? Well, to be very honest, if you are given a 3 hour time period to do 150 questions like you were given last time in December 2021, then you won't be having much of a problem, because paper 2 you have 120 minutes to do 100 questions. Most questions don't even take up 30 seconds because you either know or you don't know. So when it comes to these questions where you can figure it out, I say that even if it takes you more than 1 minute to solve these questions, you take up that time to solve these questions because you have a higher chance of getting it right. Therefore, because you will have other questions where it will take you just 15, 20, 30 seconds to solve, so you will have those spare seconds added up and you can use them in your benefit. But if you have a total of 3 hours, it will also be a problem because you will take up more than 1 hour to solve your first paper, and then you will not be left with exactly 2 hours to solve your second paper. Those of you who are not very good with timing yourselves, they might face this problem more than the others who can time themselves really well. Uh, so this is what I'm trying to tell you. Therefore, even if these type of questions take time, you can obviously take it into consideration. Another type of question is when you are given a question and it just seems to you from your gut feeling that one of them is an odd one out, or one of them could be the answer. This is what I have been teaching my students for a very long period of time. That is, grow your gut feeling. And how exactly do you grow your gut feeling? By practicing a lot of MCQs, which is my next point. I'm coming to it in a bit. Practice MCQs as much as you possibly can. How and why exactly do you need to do this? Precisely because when you practice MCQs a lot, you will get to know what exactly could be the answer to a question about which you have no idea. If you keep on doing this for at least, say, 6 months, then you will get to a better position. Which brings me to my last tactic, which is about how much time do you need to put in order to clear net. To be very honest, this is not an easy exam, but it is not a very difficult exam either. All you need to do is you have to be consistent in your efforts. That is to say, you have to ensure that you put in at least 1 hour every day for 6 months. If you put in 1 hour every day for 6 months, then that automatically means that you will be in a position to claim that you have studied, say, for 180 hours across 180 days. But if you study for 180 hours across, say, 50 days, I don't think that will be a very good idea. Why exactly am I telling you to spread out your preparation across 6 months and not just, consolidate it in 1 month, like study 10 hours a day for, 10 days or 18 days and then just be done with it? That is precisely because our brain has a limit of taking in information and storing that information. Our brain kinds of performs in a process quite similar to osmosis. So if you study something today, it's not that you can remember it tomorrow and for the rest of your life. But if you study something today, then revise it again 2 months later, then again revise it 2 months later, again revise it 2 months later, then when it comes to your exam, you will remember it. I can assure you of that. Especially if you're doing it in a written format, in a physical pen and paper method, which is my best tactic to you. That is, you don't have to give it 10 hours a day for 1 month or 2 months. Give it 1 hour a day for 6 months, and I assure you, you will clear it. For at least for paper 2, paper 1 has a slightly different approach, which I will talk about maybe in a different session, if that at all happens in the near or far future. So that brings me to my next topic, which is MCQs. What exactly do we need to do in order to practice MCQs? Where do we get these MCQs from? Well, for those of you who are appearing for NET in the subsequent year, that is in the next cycle of NET, which is supposed to be held in December but will be held in June in all probability, that is June 2023, you are more than welcome to join my batch for NET students. I take classes twice every week, one for paper 1 and one for paper 2, and I conduct mock tests once every month for both the papers. In addition to that, you are also more than welcome to solve the MCQs which are there on the internet. In the Pearson paper 2 book, there are multiple MCQs, at least quite a few thousand. 2 to 3,000 MCQs will be easily there in the Pearson book. Then you will find 3 to 4,000 MCQs in the Aryant book, few more in the Tata McGraw-Hill book, and there are many more publishers who produce books for paper 2, where you will find more MCQs. Deeptesh is asking where I take classes. My classes are conducted via Google Meet, online classes from 9 to 10 p.m. So you can find more details in the link tree desk. I will put the link for my link tree in the comment box a little later. You can find out more about that from there. Therefore, you have to practice a lot of MCQs. But then, is practicing MCQs enough? Do we need to prepare notes? Now, how and exactly where do we get these materials for notes from? Well, to be very honest, you can prepare notes for as many topics as you would like. I have a long list of topics from which you can create notes. Um, you are more than welcome to access that. I think I have the link somewhere here. I will put that in the comments section somewhere. There are some names allotted to these topics. You can ignore them. They are the names of my students. Um, I will just copy and put it in the chat box for those of you who are still watching. Um, yeah, so there are a lot of topics which are covered here. Sorry, which are mentioned here. You are free to, make notes on these topics and then try and remember as much as you can from these notes that I have now mentioned in your chat box. But what exactly do these notes need to contain? These notes not only need to contain an overview of the topic which you have chosen, but also they need to contain a historical background, a list of authors who have lived during the time period, if it's a time period, if it's an area or say a school of thought, who are the authors who have contributed to that school of thought, and most importantly a chronological list of the texts that these authors have written, and you have to put the year in which they were published in the bracket, and you have to arrange these texts chronologically once you are done listing about the author and their background, what they have contributed to that particular era or that particular school of thought. This process will allow you to not only know about a particular topic in detail. I suggest you make a small peer group with your friends, where 5 or 10 friends will come together and every friend will make topics on 4 or 5 different topics. That will take your total to a 40 or 50 odd topics, and then you can share these topics with yourselves, create a feedback group kind of thing where one person gives feedback to all the others and then gets feedback from all the others in exchange against their texts or their topics which they have chosen. This feedback culture will allow you to not only help build on what you have been missing on, but also allow you to rigorously practice, which is what is most important for us to keep an eye on what we have been taking on all this while, which is net paper 2. We are coming to a close to our talk because it's almost 8:45. I can see it's already 8:42. So I will make a few ending comments and then I will take questions if anyone has any. Firstly, it might be so that you might not be able to pass this exam right at the onset. It might take you 1 or 2 attempts to pass this exam, but then it might also come to you understanding that not everyone passes this exam at the onset only. You have to understand that this is a difficult exam but not very difficult. If you don't pass right at the first exam, that is at the first attempt, don't be disheartened, because there is so much more to your effort than right? So don't be disheartened if you don't pass it in the very first attempt. So that's more or less all that I have to say in this context. The last topic which I wanted to talk to you about was whether you need external training or not. Well, it depends on how confident you are about yourself. Because if you are very confident about yourself, then I suggest you do it on your own. I did it on my own, and I know many friends who have also done it on their own. But then it will also take you more time if you do it on your own, because guidance is very important. um, yes, I will take tonight's class on Google Meet from 9:15, because this live will take some time to get over, and something along those lines. I will take the class today. Yeah. So I hope whatever I shared today was useful. I also hope that those of you who stayed here till the end have learned something. When this live will come to a close, I will share the study materials drive link, which I think will benefit a lot of you. If there are anyone here who have any questions, you are welcome to ask me in the chat box. No, Diptesh, you actually have to first join my classes and then only you can get a link. If anyone who has been watching all this while, if you have any question, uh, I will put my link tree link here. Just give me a moment. How can you get details of my class? I will give you the link to my link tree, where you can find my you can message me on Facebook. I believe my Facebook profile is public. You are free to message me on Facebook. I will put my Facebook profile's link somewhere here. You can message me on Facebook, and I will share links of my class with you, and how you can join, and some so on and so forth. Mm. Anyone else, if you have any question, I will put my link tree here as well. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn, ResearchGate, Academia, anywhere else, you are more than welcome to do so. If anyone has any questions, please, you can ask in the chat box. No questions. Last link isn't working. Okay, let me put an HT. Thank you, Audrija. That is really kind of you. Uh, I believe the link is working now. Anyone else has any questions? Otherwise, I will end this live session in a bit. Guess no one really listened because there's no questions. Uh, Thank you, everyone, for joining me on a very special evening when, again, India is playing Pakistan. Uh, I can understand that this was not a very, entertaining source for you or anyone, including me. But since I promised, I delivered. Thank you for joining. I will try and end the stream now. I don't know what will happen after that. Thank you, everyone, for joining. If you want me to conduct a session on paper one, you can let me know. Thank you, Deeptesh, Audrija, Oyonabho, and whoever else was here with me. Orindam, Priyanka, Rusha, Sam, Samsunahar, uh, Shilpa, Dinath, uh, mm, Audrija Sharkar. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And thank you for giving me almost an hour of your time. I will hopefully see you soon on my channel and on my page. Thank you, take care, and I will now end this stream.